Thank you, Ben. It's very good to be with everybody this afternoon, and I hope all are well. We heard some notes of optimism in that last panel, and our question here is what's next for the event sector? And I guess we've been hearing inklings of that over the past 2 days about changes, about hopes for the future, about uncertainty as well, and the need for preparation. So I guess we'll get some thoughts from our panelists here about what really is ahead here. We have Glasgow well represented, a very important center for arts and culture, and your experiences there, I think, are going to inform a lot of people about what's about to happen next. Bridget McConnell, who is CEO of Glasgow Life, which deals with the museums, the theater, the cultural life, if you will, in Glasgow. Geoff Ellis, who runs one of the most important concert and events agencies in all of Europe, and certainly has been affected in the past year by what's happened. And Jakob Larsen, who now leads the events section of World Athletics. And I wanted to begin with you, Jakob. You came to work at World Athletics last February, just as the world was starting to recognize what was happening with coronavirus. You went ahead with a job offer. Did you have any idea of the tidal wave that was about to hit your area of work at the IAAF, or excuse me, World Athletics?
Yeah, thank you, Ed. No, of course I didn't. I was brought on board on the scope of work basically was innovation, a brief basically saying we need to change, we need to evolve, this is where we're going. And all of a sudden everything changed. We have all been there and lived to see throughout this year that yes, indeed, this is about innovation, but it's not about innovation of experience, event experience, it's about innovation of protocol. So it turned out to be about innovation, but also a different kind of innovation that originally planned. For now.
Yeah, you had to think on your feet. One of the first issues you had to deal with is the Indoor World Championships, which are still scheduled for Nanjing, China, in March. Those were supposed to take place last March. What is the status of that event?
Look, this is the same process we did for the World Half Marathon Championships in Gdynia and Poland. We're basically figuring out, is it possible to do the event, yes or no? And there are a lot of elements in that, but there's also the perspective of even if you're able to put on the event, are people able to join, are able to travel? How much will we impact their preparations in what came to be an Olympic year or will be an Olympic year? So it's not only a matter of our current evaluation of whether or not we can actually do the event. We're rather certain we can do the event, but it's also a matter of we can throw a party, but if no one shows, then it doesn't really work out as a party. So right now, this is what we're trying to figure out if it's something that we want to go ahead with. This is the ongoing evaluation.
So it's still not certain. There are things that could happen that would lead you to postpone this event to another date.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, this is a decision that will be made this month for a number of reasons. Mostly also because this is a stepping stone in our Olympic qualification, and athletes need to know they're planning their season next year. So whereas we, in theory, could wait making that decision, we owe it to the athletes and to the teams throughout the world to provide the information whether or not this will be part of the pathway towards Tokyo.
Yeah. Let's get the Glaswegians' point of view on where things are headed right now. Bridget McConnell, the events that make up the cultural scene in Glasgow, many cancellations last year. What are you looking ahead for in 2021? Are things being scheduled again, or is there still an era of uncertainty over whether you can have big events?
I think, like everyone, there is a huge year of uncertainty. The reality is the events we are currently looking at for 2021 will either be playing like the UEFA football in stadia with reduced numbers of spectators, or, for instance, Celtic Connections, which will be primarily online. I think generally we are in a really difficult situation. We are trying to, just listen to John Ridgeon earlier, remain optimistic. And I think, the hybrid models, as exemplified by many events that are in the calendar already, is with us for good, I think. That's positive. We'll see more people, we'll have a wider reach, we'll hear more voices, we'll be more connected. But I do think, as I said when I made the welcome speech yesterday, events aren't just icing in a cake. They aren't just a sort of economic model. They are actually essential to the human condition. People want to come together. They want to celebrate. They want to experience the best of human achievement in music, in art, and in sport. So there will be a real pressing need to make sure that the protocols we have in place continue to support live events. And I think that will be, a challenge, because also, as we've heard just earlier from June, is we have increased costs and significantly decreased income. However, I would just like to say, without sounding like Polly Downer, we have a major issue, certainly in the UK and in Scotland and Glasgow. The infrastructure which provides a platform for so many international, national and local events is seriously at risk. An organisation like Glasgow Life, which basically manages most of the cultural and sport facilities in the city, 171 of them, is only currently able to open 61. And we have lost £38 million this year in earned income. And whilst we have had one-off payments from furlough money and Scottish Government grants very gratefully received, we're still looking at a deficit at the end of this year of 20 million, and then back to square one on the 1st of April of really limited potential to make anything close to that 38 million back again. In fact, our estimates are projecting we'll be lucky if we get 6 to 8 million. What that means, not just for the city, but for events who partner with us and who use the venues in the city, is that some of the venues are potentially at major risk. The licensing, the technical, the health and safety staff may not be in employment. We are seeing a dramatic loss of skills. And that really needs to grab all our attention sooner rather than later. I know that we've been dealing with the immediacy of this crisis, but we have to get some longer term planning in place. Otherwise, we will lose not just lots of events, but the skills base that has built up this national and international and indeed local programme over many years. So I have some ideas about solutions, and I'm happy to talk about them later, but I'll stop there just now.
To some of those solutions. Geoff, Ellis, in the concert industry, who's interested in going to concerts these days? What musical acts are interested in touring these days? What's the supply and demand like in your sector of the events world?
Well, I think what's encouraging is that people are still buying tickets for events. I mean, I put a show on sale for an Australian band called DMAs, who are playing our event in Edinburgh Summer Sessions in August next year, and that's almost sold out 6,000 tickets, and that was sold in a week. Transmit is our main festival next summer in Glasgow in July, which we're still planning to go ahead with in July at the moment. That's selling very well. We've had a threefold increase week on week on sales, to that partly down to our Christmas campaign with that. And refunds for shows that have been rescheduled on a UK national basis are sitting at about 7%, which is really low. So that shows that people are very much looking forward to live entertainment in general taking place. What we're really lacking, and I echo everything that Bridget just said, we're lacking at any kind of roadmap and strategic plan from either UK government or Scottish government in terms of when we're going to be able to restart and at what level, because live entertainment will only work on full capacity. Theatre shows need to be at full capacity, concerts need to be at full capacity, most sport needs to be at full capacity as well, except some of it can operate with reduced numbers or without audiences. But in general, to be back up and running, we need to be at full capacity, and we're getting no indication of when that might be. So we're ploughing, and look, we know it's not going to be in the first quarter of next year, and we're realistic about that. But with the vaccine plans, to roll out, we should be confident that the vulnerable will be vaccinated hopefully by say March, and a significant number of the rest of the population by perhaps April, May time. And if I accept the full population won't be vaccinated by then, but surely if the vulnerable are vaccinated, then we can mitigate the risk by going to full capacity events, but with other mitigating factors such as temperature checks, audience pre-testing, rapid testing, which I accept doesn't give 100% security, but if the vulnerable are vaccinated, then 70% is probably okay in that scenario. And a combination of perhaps COVID trained sniffer dogs, some element of mask wearing still, so we hope to be able to be at full capacity outdoors for June and July, with arena business perhaps coming back in September. There isn't much arena business in the summer anyway. So that's where I think we are, but there's definitely demand there. But the real risk for us, I've got shows with Green Day, Guns N' Roses and The Killers all coming in from the States for June shows next year. And at the moment, they have to make decisions on touring the whole of Europe. So they're at the tipping point for answers now, because if they don't think they can go ahead with those shows, they're going to need to cancel them soon, otherwise they're incurring incredible costs around, flights and hotels and just, carnets and general logistics. There's a chance we lose all of next summer because we don't know when we're going to get the green light and won't know in time. And the other big blockage that we have is the unavailability of COVID-19 cancellation cover, which no insurer is prepared to insure against pandemics anymore. So whilst we've had good insurance up till now, it's not possible to get it. So we're pushing UK government to come up with we've come up with a solution, which is a variation of what already exists for flood risk and for terrorism. And that can be easily adapted for live entertainment, for theatre, for sport too. But it's essential, because any event we're planning for 21 or even 2022, there's no insurance available for COVID cover. That puts everybody at serious risk, particularly smaller operators who are having to mortgage their houses against against an uninsurable risk.
Do you expect to get some sort of government aid to help your business, or are you just stuck with higher costs? And how do you cover those costs?
Well, that's it. There's not any sufficient funding other than the furlough scheme, which has been wonderful, but the funding has been very piecemeal and quite disruptive actually in Scotland, with some venues getting money from one fund, other venues being denied because of that sector from the previous fund. So there's been a tenfold difference in the same size of venues. That's market disruptive. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't disrupt the market. It's supportive and not disruptive. So, the risk we're taking for our outdoor shows in 21-22 is millions of pounds on each show. And if they're cancelled because of artist illness, we can make an insurance claim. If they're cancelled because of a localised lockdown, then we can't play. And we'll be sick. Possibly. Their huge costs are incurred early on in their because they have to set up very, very early in the year for a June event. So, if their show can't go ahead come May of next year, and that's when the cancellation is, they'll have millions of pounds worth of sunk costs that will probably, take them under. They won't be able to fund it.
Your events, Bridget McConnell's events, theater, they depend on spectators, on fans coming to hear their music or see the show. In the case of athletics, I think, as we're discovering in other forms of sport, the live audience, is not needed. As you look to the future, Jakob, how important will it be to get fans back in the stadium to watch your sport?
Well, obviously for the in-stadium events, it's important for the pure ambience of the event. I would argue, though, that as we move forward, for the events that we organize together with a host city, it's much more about what takes place before and after the event outside the stadium. It's much more about working together on building and providing value in return for the host city and for everyone who's actually engaging with this event. So you could argue that the spectators they're not really needed. They're not essential. It's much more essential that we actually get the balance right between the required investment of time, finance, and other types of resources, and also what kind of value proposition are we providing in return. For the spectators, that's part of the experience design, I would argue, but it's definitely nice to have, and very, very nice to have, but in the future need to have, is to get the balance right between the types of investment we're looking for and also what kind of value proposition do we offer in return to host cities and other stakeholders.
Yeah. Bridget McConnell, you were going to mention some solutions you have to these challenges you face. Given the figures that you cited a few minutes ago, it sounds like it would take years and years to claw back the revenue to where you were before.
Yeah, and I do think there needs to be a recognition that major government intervention in a range of ways will be required, not just one-off subsidies. I mean, furlough, as Geoff said, has been terrific, but the reality is that people want to work their way out of this crisis. They don't want to not be working, and the resultant loss of a number of businesses and self-employed in the supply chain is deeply worrying for the future. So I am making the case that we need to, in terms of job schemes and employability, be seeing the event sector as being real jobs, being good jobs, and not just something that's good to have when there's lots of money and there isn't a virus. We need to be making the case, for instance, in Glasgow, there is approximately 30 million will be coming into employability schemes. Well, I think we as a sector have to be making a case that some of the skills development and the jobs have to be supported through that means. And also the health and well-being elements. The health service is facing a tsunami, a mental health and a physical health tsunami. It can't provide medical solutions to all the problems, and actually events, culture, sport are very well placed to really play a role in improving quality of life, quality of just experience of living for people, which is at the heart of so much of the difficulties people are currently experiencing. So I think there has to be a recalibration and a lot of advocacy and lobbying, recalibration of funding towards some of these sectors like our own, not just because we need the money, that is not a good enough reason, but because we can actually make a major contribution to employment, to the economy and to health and well-being. On a more prosaic level, I think we will see a change in people's patterns of travel. I think people will not be travelling in future in the numbers and the number of times, as we've seen in recent years, not just because of viruses, but because of the climate change issues too. I think there are opportunities there. Take something like athletics or even concerts. We can use venues and outdoor spaces to create the opportunity for people to see live music performances, maybe at a reduced rate in their local village halls or in their local stadium. I think the sector needs to be thinking more creatively about those kinds of solutions and supporting people who want to come together. The need to come together will never go away. People will always want to go to events and to experience what is a unique experience. It is not the same as watching something online. However, I think that hybrid model I spoke about earlier could be quite innovative, and we could look at more earned income. And just finally, I also am thinking back to the 90s when government made available a range of enterprise allowance schemes. And indeed, some of the bands, the big bands that Geoff hosted in later years, the Happy Mondays, were unemployed at the time, and they took advantage of those grants. So again, I think we have to be imaginative and creative about those grants and making them available to the sector.
Geoff, Ellis, your big festival every year is the Transmit Festival. I think you had 100,000 people or so go to past editions. What are you expecting this year if you go with the event?
Well, we have to be at full capacity to go with it, which is 50,000 a day across 3 days. It's 150,000 people. That generates just over £10 million for the Glasgow economy. So Glasgow needs Transmit to happen next summer as much as DF concerts do. But we can't operate with social distancing, both from a practical level. 50,000 people in basically a big field, it's impossible to enforce social distancing. But on a reduced capacity, the event just doesn't stack up. The break even is very high. There's no point in us taking that level of risk to break even either. We need to be making a profit from it. I just hope that we get an indication from government early enough that enables us to plan alongside the local authority to deliver that event. We've also got outdoor shows at Bellahouston Park in June that between them are 3 shows are over 100,000 attendees. So we need those to get a green light too. But fully expect enhanced hygiene measures. Lots of hand gel stations. Lots of lots of entry points and egress points. More so than usual. Reduce kind of queuing. Where we can. We'll be pretty much contactless as much as possible. Certainly we're already moving towards mobile ticketing as an industry, and we'll be encouraging again contactless ticketing as much as possible. So there's lots of things that we'll be doing. I imagine our backstage areas will be very secure. So you'll have a touring party in a dressing room with nobody else having access. The backstage area will be even more closed down than it would be normally. I think touring parties will have a COVID officer. Certainly talking to some of the big acts and the big production managers on a global basis, they're all talking about touring in a very different fashion to what they have done, certainly for the next 12 months, perhaps not taking support bands on the road with them, certainly having a COVID officer dealing with the advanced safety measures with the venues and with the promoters. So it will be a changed landscape, but that's what we're used to doing. We're used to managing risk in our industry. We do it every day with hostile vehicle mitigation and other anti-terrorism mitigations, with stopping drugs and weapons coming into events, providing healthcare for people who've overindulged in alcohol or illicit substances, and avoiding crushing. There's a whole raft of of safety measures that we have to mitigate against on a daily basis, and you know, COVID-19 will be another one of those on that checklist.
Sounds like your costs are going up in a crazy kind of way. What about ticket prices?
Ticket prices, you know, we're the same as we were when we launched Transmit in 2017. So we've kept the ticket price the same each year. It's a difficult one because, you know, people don't have more money. You know, a lot of people have less money, and people are worried about their jobs, and if they've still got jobs. So, you know, you can't just add, you know, money onto a ticket price. The good thing is people want to go to live entertainment in general. So that's a really encouraging thing. And that's what people are most looking forward to getting back to, because it is great for people's mental health and well-being, it being part of an audience. Everybody's seen as many stream concerts as they want to see in a lifetime. They want that live experience, and there's nothing that compares with the live experience, you know. And people love that. And whether it's theatre, whether it's opera, classical music, or deep down and dirty rock and roll, whatever it is, people love that shared euphoric experience. The same as sports as well. You know, it's much better to be in a football ground or a rugby stadium watching it than watching it on TV. But certainly live entertainment doesn't transfer well to a small screen. It's best enjoyed in person, and it's not just what you're watching on stage, it's a camaraderie, the shared experience. That's what's really, really important. And what's encouraging is, you know, we're seeing there's still that audience demand there. Ticketmaster did a recent global survey that showed that a really high percentage of people can't wait to get back to live events once it's safe to do so. So, you know, that's a good thing. We know we've got a viable business, we've got a viable industry going forward. We just need to make sure that whole ecosystem is still in place for when we do return, because we need all the independent operators, the PA companies, the staging companies, the fencing companies, the toilet companies, you know, the backline techs, the sound engineers. Already some people, because of their skill set and their unique skill set, are moving away from live music into logistics. So, you know, I know of production managers who've taken jobs with DHL or with Amazon in terms of coordinating logistics, because that's what their experts are doing. And they're going, well, that's safe money. Amazon isn't going to go out of business. They don't need to wait for different tiers to be lifted before they can you know, manage their logistics. So that's our real fear, that the freelancers in particular will fall through the cracks and not be there. And that's the same fear for theatre as it is for rock and roll.
Yeah. We're about to go through a period of uncertainty while the vaccine is starting to be administered in the UK and other places, soon maybe in the States. I don't think we still have a clear idea about where things will go. We hope the vaccine makes everything better and a quicker return to normal than would be expected. But Jakob, World Athletics still must have a very flexible approach to staging events in this climate. We don't know what will happen next exactly. We hope we know what will happen next, but yeah.
No, but you're absolutely right. I mean, right now, one would imagine that we would be having a lot of spare time right now because we're not putting on events, but it's actually not the case. We spend a lot of time doing contingency planning, multiple scenario planning, etc., simply because we don't know what the world will look like in 2 months, 3 months, even a year. So for every event, we're not working on one operational plan, if you will. We are actually working on multiple. So right now it's an interesting exercise. Let's just put it like that.
We've got a few questions here. We should get to those before we lose our time here. Joanne DePonio has a question about rapid testing and how the field is becoming complex for event organizers to navigate, and questions remain over the accuracy of results. Would the event sector benefit from a coordinated approach for rapid testing at the government level to support the restart of events?
Definitely, yeah.
Geoff?
Yeah, definitely, because I think we'll all be relying on audience testing before going to events. Certainly in the short term, to get us through, so we can have a summer in 21. Hopefully by September time, everybody's had the vaccine, and it won't be necessary. But at the moment, some of the things like there's a test called the LAMP test, which is, I think, the unit cost is about £65. That's too prohibitive, because we need it around the £5 price point for audiences to pay out to go to a concert. But it wouldn't just work for concerts; it work for if a passport could be for 2 days. Imagine at Edinburgh Festival, you can take in maybe 6 or 7 shows in that time period. So it starts to become, a small price to pay. So, but I think rather than relying on event organisers to come up with the solutions, a coordinated approach from government with the various manufacturers of tests, that would be good, because we need them to be affordable, and we need the government to have a confidence in them as well. But as I say, 100% reassurance isn't necessary when the vulnerable are vaccinated. The whole point of what we've been going through is to stop the NHS being overrun, and to obviously stop and reduce the number of deaths. But if that's already happening through the vaccine, then there has to be a point where there's an acceptable level of risk from the rapid testing.
Yeah. Bridget McConnell, any thoughts on the standardization? Everybody working from the same set of standards and tests.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, it's an absolute no-brainer, and I think in a range of other areas as well, it would be good for us to have a more coordinated approach. I think certainly in Scotland, the establishment of the Events Industry Advisory Group is a start in that process, and I'm hoping that it will, now that we're moving a bit away from the immediacy of the crisis, that we can start collectively to look at areas where we can plan together, we can influence government and other policies, and that we can get things like collective testing arrangements in place. So I think across the world we need to be doing that. Certainly, for us in Scotland, we have got a base for doing that. We haven't done a lot of it yet, but there's the potential.
And for Jakob, sport is not necessarily bound to any particular government, but does sport overall need to come up with some sort of standardization for testing and for COVID protocols?
Yes, I would say so, but it needs to interact with society as a whole, and there's a very specific reason for that, in my opinion. If a COVID-19 test costs €100, right, and you need a negative test in order to attend an event, then you're basically adding €100 to the price of attending this event, and that's just not sustainable. So it needs to interact with society as a whole, and that's why having a passport that's sort of generic across countries would definitely help, because otherwise I definitely see the price point of testing as a significant issue for event organizers.
Yeah, and we have one other question here. I'm going to toss it over to Geoff Ellis. The need expressed for someone with experience in disability to be part of your COVID protocols. The question is, that people with disabilities need to feel comfortable that their needs will be attended to as well in these COVID protocols when going to events.
Yeah, absolutely, and accessibility is a big focus for us pre-COVID, and we'll be not post-COVID, but as we move forward, it needs to be as well, because those needs are very important. And we work with people like Attitude is Everything in terms of planning our or accessibility, protocols, and we've found that direct communication with customers, with a whole range of accessibility needs has been a benefit. It's helped us to learn more about what the demands are, but also it helps us in terms of putting in the right facilities, and communication is everything, because there's no point having a load of good facilities and then having poorly trained stewards who don't know how to signpost people to those facilities. So yes, it needs to be part of it, and I'd say it needs to be part of it for every event organizer, really, whether it's a small scale event or a large scale event like Transmit.
Yeah. Well, we are out of time. Good luck to all of you. Bringing the work that you do brings happiness, joy to people's lives, and the more concerts there are, the more museums and theaters there are, the more track meets there are, the world will be, I think, a happier place as we look to the future. Good luck to all of you. Thanks very much for joining us here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ed, for ending on that characteristically upbeat note there. And we're all very much looking forward to the day when we can all get together in person to enjoy these joyous occasions that we're here to talk about at Host City. The poll that was running throughout that panel is on a slightly less optimistic note. The question was, what do you see as the biggest threat facing the events industry in 2021 and beyond? The options were impact of COVID and slow recovery, digital disruption, or environmental concerns. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the people saw the biggest threat. At 83% of youth said the impact of COVID and slow recovery was the biggest threat. 10% of people said environmental concerns are the biggest threat to the events industry, and just 7% saw digital disruption as the biggest threat. So thank you very much for your thoughts there.